I'm a bad motherfucker.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the live stream. You see this book? I'm here. We have a special guest, the author of this book, General Anthony Tata, which I so want to say Tata. But General Anthony Tata performed the duties of the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy in the Trump administration from November 2020 to January 2021. He is a 28-year veteran of the United States Army, during which time he served as the Deputy Commanding General of the 10th Mountain Division and Joint Task Force 76 in Afghanistan from 2006 to 2007, where he earned the Combat Action Badge and Bronze Star Medal. He is the author of numerous best-selling novels, including his latest, The Phalanx Code, and is a Newsmax national security contributor and a frequent foreign policy guest commentator on Fox News and CNN. Please welcome to the show, General Anthony Tata.
Jimmy, great to be with you. Thank you.
Now, how many privates did you have to asses did you have to bust when they tried to call you General Tata? Because I tried to.
I would just say, Jimmy, that I've been called worse four-letter words.
Okay,
and, leave it at that.
So the praise for this book is amazing, right? So the Publishers Weekly say lots of credible action, plenty of government traitors, and shocking losses fuel the action. Tata continues to rise among the ranks of today's top military action writers. Mark Cameron is a #1 New York Times bestselling author, and he says, full of energy and snapping with action, chasing the lion is Tony Tata at his best. Garrett Sinclair is a powerhouse of a hero. There's all people are. If you're looking for a good night's sleep, leave this one on the nightstand, says Jimmy Carr. Also, Tony Tata has written a white-knuckled read that I dare you to put down. So this lots of great praise for this book. And I didn't know that generals wrote fiction and did it well. So congratulations on that, sir.
Thanks, Jimmy. It's always been a good outlet for me, and I've enjoyed delivering 16 novels, and readers seem to enjoy them, and I like entertaining.
16.
16.
Wow,
16.
So my 16th novel.
So tell me what's the inspiration for this one? This one, by the way, it's going into a second printing, correct?
Yeah. They just I got an email today, said they're waiting on another printing before they can send me some books to send out to folks. So the basic premise or the inspiration was about 3 years ago. Jimmy, remember when some guy in the White House called some guy at Twitter and said, we don't like these 50 people, so deplatform them, demonetize them, and kick them off?
Yeah.
And I thought, how bad is that? That's so un-American. Big tech and big government coming together to put their jackboot on the little guy. And so that's really the premise here is there's, the Phalanx Corporation is a big, think Google and Facebook and their worst digital carnivore instincts measured or matched with government, fighting against those that are trying to develop decentralized Wi-Fi, decentralized finance, those last frontiers of digital freedom. And our hero, Garrett Sinclair, is co-opted in to help and defend the Optimus Project, which think Elon Musk in his best instincts, trying to preserve liberty. And I wrote this before Musk bought Twitter or any of that stuff. It just really upset me that some dude in the White House could call some dude at Twitter and say, deplatform these people. And he'd say, yeah, no problem. Let's go get a cheeseburger.
So, so now you're a general, and you're saying that when the government censors, they're not doing it for national security reasons or to protect me?
It's all about political power, Jimmy. We all know this, and so this Biden regime or administration, they're doing very calculated political moves, not only to secure their power for the near term, but for the long term with this mass migrant, to flood districts. You can't ask people if they're citizens when you do the census count. It's all about creating political power base that will be forever if we don't get in front of it, and it may be too late even then.
So you think? So let me ask you this question, because you served under President Trump, and I have a couple of questions about that. One, why do you think so? Because Donald Trump was loved by the establishment and the donor class my entire life. He was invited on every late night talk show. He was asked to guest host Saturday Night Live. He was on the cover of every magazine. NBC gave him his own Emmy nominated television show for over a decade, and Hollywood stars would come and bend their knee and call him Mr. Trump. And his daughter's best friends with the Clintons. He used to go golfing with Bill Clinton. They all went to their second and third weddings together. They all loved each other until Donald Trump became president, and then he became a combination of Hitler, Mussolini, Pol Pot, and Idi Amin. And why do you think that is? Why do you think that this billionaire, Donald Trump, who was loved by that billionaire class, went to becoming such a pariah and the origin of everything wrong and evil in America? What happened?
Yeah, so his America First agenda disrupts this globalist agenda, and by pulling together the middle class in particular in a very Reagan-esque kind of fashion, he disrupted this 8 years of Obama and a projected 8 years of Hillary Clinton to cement all the things that we were just talking about with respect to the progressive agenda that has really taken root here. You look at the universities and how insanely liberal they are, and the pro-Hamas protests that are going on in the universities, and so for me, this is all about disrupting the liberal agenda, the progressive agenda, and President Trump does that, because he wants to put America first. He wants to put Americans first, and so they have to pursue him the way they're pursuing him with their lawfare and calling him Hitler. When in fact, you look at the Biden administration and they're doing some serious projection. All you got to do is watch yesterday's hearing with the special counsel. Biden had classified documents in 9 or 10 places, and they were all unsecured. and he knew what he was doing. He told his biographer, his ghostwriter, that he was, oh yeah, the classified documents are in the basement. Why don't you go grab them? And so, but he's not being charged, right? And so there's this double system. They got to get rid of Trump somehow, because he's got so much support right now. If if he wins, he will disrupt the momentum that's happening from a progressive left standpoint, and it's really sad, because we got a great country, but we're on the brink of fundamentally changing it, as Barack Obama promised.
So, I agree with a lot of what you said. The only thing I'm curious about is you say that he interrupts the progressive left agenda, but as you know, the establishment Republicans hate him as well, and they won't stand up for him, and they won't say what you just said, that this is a selective prosecution by the U.S. Justice Department about his classified documents. We all know that Joe Biden took classified documents, and he took them. He was vice president when he took those. He wasn't the president. President Trump was the president. He's the only person who could declassify those documents.
Right.
Joe Biden took them when he was vice president, and he took them so he could give them to a ghostwriter so he could write a book. So it was all about an $8 million book deal. That's what Joe Biden was really about. And he's been about money his whole career. We know this. So why is the Republican establishment also going, if this is about Donald Trump interrupting the left progressive agenda, why is the establishment in the Republican Party going along with his prosecutions?
Yeah, I think two things there, Jimmy, and you make really good points. One is, the Republicans are about money too, and Trump sort of disrupts some of their cash flow, whether it's from donors or making them, if you're not supportive of Trump, you're sort of, if you're not my friend, you're my enemy kind of thing. And so, some people don't know where to position themselves with respect to President Trump. And so I think there's that piece. And then I think the media goes after people so hard, the mainstream media, that people are, scared to pop up out of the foxhole to support the president because they're going to get shot between the eyes by one of the corporate media out there. And, it's a blood sport right now. And certainly if you're out there front running for President Trump, you're going to get a lot of slings and arrows in your back for just for supporting the guy, like Dr. Ben Carson, is out there supporting him, openly on social media. Here's a flaw, as flawless a human being as you can have, him and Candy, his wife, awesome people. I know them, and they're getting all these accusations. They're getting all this, stuff thrown at them, and you got to have some tenacity to put up with that. And so I think it's those two things. One is, the media goes after people, and the other is, the Republicans. Maybe it's kind of a uniparty in some respects. Support, a lot of the very moderate. Moderate now or left. The whole thing is shifted hard to the left, and so people who used to be center left Democrats are now center right Republicans. It shifted so hard.
So,
but they got to.
So, well, I would actually say people who are actually right-wing, warmongering authoritarians are now somehow considered to be left. People
that
like
never changes.
People like Joe Biden, people like Hillary Clinton, people like everybody in the Democratic Party who's elected, pretty much. They're all authoritarian, right? And that COVID proved that. They're all pro-war. Ukraine proved that. And so my theory is why that he's hated by the Democrats and the Republicans, and why the Republicans won't stand up and point out the inconsistencies in the political prosecution of Donald Trump and his following, right? January 6th, they went along with January 6th, meaning the prosecution of it, which was an unfair, cherry-picked, bogus, bullshit prosecution, which is why they didn't try to prosecute Donald Trump in an actual court of law. They did a show trial, and we've called the January 6th hearings a show trial since it started, because that was all about a show. And then Tucker Carlson reveals the videos they didn't want you to see, which completely upends their whole narrative. And it's all about criminalizing their political. And then the reason I think that the Republicans go along with this is because they're controlled by the same billionaire class, the same donors that run the WEF, run this country, run the Democratic Party, run the Republican Party, and they only get to fight over bullshit things, right? Like right now, they all supported the Ukraine war. They all supported Israel and Gaza. They all supported COVID and lockdowns and mandates, and they all supported censorship. And it's weird because it has flipped. The only time you'll get voices against censorship or against the war in Ukraine, for instance, is from Republicans, right? So that they have a much bigger anti-war, anti-censorship caucus in the Republican Party, but it's still not the majority whatsoever. And I just think it's that that the donor class, that's the game they play, and the Republicans and the Democrats don't have really any big disagreements between each other. They agree on all the most horrible things. They agree on war. They agree on authoritarianism. They agree on censorship, squash. They agree on being against workers. They agree against on all this stuff. And so I think, and here's the big thing that Donald Trump did, and Chuck Schumer admitted it on Rachel Maddow's show, was that Donald Trump would not be controlled by the deep state. They couldn't control him. And do you agree with that? Because Chuck Schumer said that he's being very stupid to go against the CIA and the intelligence community because they have 6 ways to Sunday to mess with you. And what Chuck Schumer was admitting in that moment, that's called a gaffe because he told the truth, right? So the gaffe is that the truth is that the president doesn't control the deep state, meaning the CIA, the FBI, and the NSA. They control him. And would you agree with that? That's the big problem with Donald Trump, is that the deep state, which doesn't work for the American people, doesn't work for the president. They work for the international billionaire class. That's what the NSA, the CIA, and the FBI work for. So would you agree with any of that or disagree? Go ahead.
No, I think you far more eloquently than I did. Said the same thing I was trying to say, is that they're controlled. They appreciate having big campaigns, donations, and funds. All these people come in, as average Joe Schmoes, and they leave, multimillionaires when they leave Congress, and you got to wonder why, right? Whether it's insider trading or free money or all of the above. So yeah, I agree with that. And then on the deep state aspect, I came in as the Deputy Undersecretary of Defense in August or July of 21, and my first week there, I find this document that had been written by somebody in Trump's DOD, and it's a path to reestablishing the Iran nuclear deal. And they wanted me to sign it, and I said, I may have just shown up here, but I've been paying attention. And I said, the president does not support the Iran nuclear deal. Why would you show this? Why would this document exist? Why would you be preserving a pathway to do that? And this is 180 from the president's vision. And she just said, well, I thought that, this is what I think ought to happen. I said, who, the F elected you? Nobody elected. Your job is to follow the president's vision. And the president has been very clear about maximum pressure on Iran. And that does not include a golden bridge into the Iran nuclear deal. And so that's just one little personal example. It's real. The deep state is real. There are many good public servants, working in the government. There are also many radicalized, insane people that think that they are the ones who have been, elected to lead the nation. When in fact, they're just a career, GS or SES, and they're plodding away and building their little empires. And you got that in the NSA, you got it in the DNI, you got it in the FBI, you got it in the CIA. And those people have unlimited power, and they can destroy people, and they have destroyed people. And just look at this concerted effort going on against President Trump. It's rather insane with everything happening right now, that to preserve democracy, we got to kick this guy off the ballot. That tells you everything you need to know about the Alice in Wonderland world that we're living in right now, because there are people, fully, probably 35% of the country is like, yeah, I'm all in for that. Let's preserve democracy by kicking a nominee off the ballot. And it makes no sense. It's obviously autocratic, and that's where all of this is hitting, and that's what the Phalanx Code, quite frankly, is about, is that combination, techno-fascism, and we're seeing it in real life right now.
So I'll say, just to add one more thing onto that, is that when Donald Trump was asked why he was leaving troops in Syria, he said that he's leaving troops in Syria for the oil. It's our oil and we're taking it. That's a direct quote. And so when I heard him say that, I knew he was in trouble, because that's always been our foreign policy. That's what it's always been based on. But I mean, you read, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. We've known this, that the capitalists and the corporatists use the military to invade smaller countries, or use the CIA to foment discord, overthrow them, and then we install a puppet. We did it in Iran. We tried to do it in Venezuela most recently, and they rejected it, right, with Juan Guaido. And so Donald Trump just says it right out in the open. He looked into a camera, and the whole world heard the president of the United States say our foreign policy is based on invading smaller countries and taking their natural resources. He said it most recently just at a campaign stop a couple of weeks ago when he talked about, Venezuela. He put economic sanctions on Venezuela. And so what that did is create 7 million immigrants into the United States from Venezuela because he caused so much economic pain on them. And then he said, if I was president, we would have gotten that oil. They were just about ready to fall. We would have gotten that. Again, he keeps giving the game away. And you're supposed to lie when you're the president. And you're supposed to say this is about freeing people from dictators and bringing them liberty and freedom. That's what it's supposed to be about. But the game, he really gave it away when he said this is really about stealing natural resources. Just like when the United States and NATO blew up Nord Stream pipeline. Just like the Ukraine war, which is a right. Look at Khashoggi. No one gives a shit about him. No one gives a shit about Gonzalo Lira. Right now, they're trying to kill Julian Assange not because he worked with the Russians, but because he revealed the war crimes of America in Iraq. So I think that's the big thing. He wouldn't be controlled by the deep state. And now that President Biden, along with President Obama, along with President Bush and Clinton, they were all controlled by the deep state. And if you're not allowed to be president. And if you are somehow managed to squeak through as president, like Trump did, they immediately do a thing called Russiagate on you, which was a conspiracy theory that was hatched by not only the Democratic Party and Hillary Clinton's campaign, but the FBI, who had to lie 17 times to the FISA court to get phone taps on the Trump's campaign. And even with those phone taps, they still couldn't find a crime to convict him of. Right. And So, and then they impeached, people forget what they really impeached Donald Trump for was that he put a pause on weapon shipments to the Ukraine. So now the only reason to vote for the guy is now an impeachable offense because the deep state and the uniparty, Republicans and Democrats, want war. That's what this is all about. So I wanted to show you this. So I like to show this on my show. These are all the U.S. military bases around the world.
It's not a sex offender registry.
This is not a sex offender registry. This is look at Africa. Look at the Middle East. Look at Asia. Look at Europe. Look at this. It's amazing. And so we've had this is real. And not only there, but it's also in South America. Look at Central America. That is. So
and we still couldn't beat China or Russia in a war currently. And we still all that shit. How is that possible?
How is that? But so do you think it's time for us to pull back on the American empire? Do you think the United States needs 1,000 military bases spread across the world like this?
I thought this was a map of all your Airbnbs that you have, Jimmy. All of these bases, all the blue dots there. Should probably be cut by 2/3. And when I was the Undersecretary for Policy performing those duties, we were taking a hard look at the draw. We drew down out of Somalia, for example. We moved and we did it in the dark of night over a week, and we didn't talk about it. But those 2,000 troops ish were gone. And we recommended to President Trump to go down around 2,500 in Afghanistan and take a look at it, see what it looked like, make sure NATO was working with us. Biden fundamentally broke NATO when he just kind of left all of that. He left 29 other nations with no way out, and they had to figure it out. And that's part of why there was no diplomacy in the lead up to Putin moving to the border. He saw how incompetent Blinken and Biden and all of them were and just started rolling to the border and said, yeah, if I'm going to go, I might as well go now. But because Biden had so fundamentally broken NATO, they just kind of let Russia come, because what unifies something better than anything is a common threat, right? So that Russian threat came there. Nobody talked about how Biden broke NATO anymore, and I know because I have a lot of friends in these countries at very senior levels, and they were very, very, very upset. Right now, the progressive agenda has so demoralized the military and this weak leadership that we have that we can't make recruiting goals by about 25%. And so instead of making sure that we can meet those goals by changing something, they just lower the goal, right? So they're doing an election year. And when you announce recruiting hits or misses is around October, right? Because, it's the fiscal year, so it ends September 30th. And so magically in October, I'll bet you a beer that Biden's going to say, and for the first time in 4 years, we've hit our recruiting goals. And all they will have done is lower the number of people that they're trying to recruit. And our Constitution says raise an army, but maintain a navy. And so it's getting to your point here, this army that we are supposed to scale up or down based upon threat was intentional from the framers of the Constitution, because they saw the land wars going on in Europe, and they didn't want that. They feared a big federal government, and that's also part of the well-regulated militias, and that became the National Guard. And so you have that tension between states and the federal, the big government, and now coupled with big tech that can really, really do some damage. And so but the Navy is about power projection, is about protecting commerce first and foremost back then when this was written. And so maintain a navy. The words mean things, particularly to the framers. And so the army, if we couldn't fight right now one regional war, much less two with China and Russia. And our national defense strategy lists China, Russia, Iran, North Korea as our four main adversaries. And right now we are not scaling our force to the vital interests of the nation, which is the formula you're supposed to follow. What are our vital interests? How do we defend those or protect those or ensure those? And then how big a military do we need to do that? And that's right before I left, I submitted a defense planning budget defense planning guidance that matched the budget with the president's vision for DOD. And it's very important that all that hard work happens. And right now we're so busy infusing ideological garbage and with DEI and this anti whatever and BLM stuff. I mean, for God's sake, West Point is changing its mission statement. It looks like I just saw some stuff going. They're removing duty, honor, country from the mission statement. I mean, that the fundamental change going on in our bedrock institutions right now that helped make this country so great is really alarming to see some of these things happening. And it's with the invasion across the border, with the media and lockstep with the regime. Instead of holding a microphone up to the media, to the administration and asking questions, they've got a megaphone and they're parroting the administration message, a narrative to the American people. That's fundamentally not the Fourth Estate's job. And so this collusion between the media, the administration, and big tech is really damaging not only the fabric of our country, but in particular what used to be one of the most trusted institutions in the world, which is the American military. And right now, I would say that's not the case, and many polls say that's not the case. And so these dots on your map, we can't man most of those places. We can't effectively do the job that those places were there for, and even if it's a supply depot. So we're in real trouble.
So, it's been the position of this show that America, not Al Qaeda or ISIS or Iran, is the world's terrorists, and we have been not only with Iraq. Prove that, but what we did to Libya, what we did in Syria, Yemen, we helped commit a genocide there. We're helping commit a genocide right now in Gaza. This war in Ukraine was provoked by the United States, and the 2014 Maidan coup. That's the problem. Is that you just outlined the problem of the news media is not an attack dog or a watchdog of the foreign policy or the government. They're just there as a lapdog. And so when they talked about the Ukraine war, they start the story in the third act. And the third act is when Putin invaded Ukraine. They don't tell you that the CIA got in bed with right-wing Nazis to overthrow their democratically elected government in Ukraine. They don't tell you that the Ukraine government started shelling all the Russian speakers in the eastern part of Ukraine who didn't want to go along with that coup government, and that they had two peace accords called the Minsk Accords, and that who broke those? Not the people of the Donbass and not Russia, but the government of Ukraine did that while they continued to shell. And now we have the former leader of Germany, Merkel, admitted that the only reason they did those Minsk Accords in the first place was to buy time so they could build up the Ukraine military so they could get ready for this war with Russia, which is an economic proxy war, which is why we blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. And I think the only reason why people like countries like Germany and Europe go along with this militarization and this terrorism by the United States is because of all these bases that I have over my shoulder, and because we are the world's imperialists. And is there any other terrorist group in the world that you can think of that has caused more mayhem, set more fires, killed more people in the last 20 years than the United States and our military?
Well, Jimmy, having served in the military for a career, and served at DOD and served in education and transportation in the county, city, and state levels, I don't know that I would ascribe to the notion that America is a terrorist nation. What I will say is that there's a significant double standard, and I'll just tell you, I was a brigade commander, a colonel in the 101st Airborne Division, commanding the Strike Brigade, the 2nd Brigade, and we were in Kosovo. Putting out small-scale Kosovo Albanians attacking Macedonians and defending against Serbs, and it was your standard peacekeeping chaos that was practically combat just about every day. And 9/11 happened. Bush came over to visit, and June of July of 01, and like 45 days later, 9/11 happens. And I get told, hey, you're coming back home, and then you're going to go to Afghanistan with my 4,000 troops. And I said, yeah, that's what we do. That's what we're paid to do. And so while I'm training, I get back with my brigade Thanksgiving Day, 01, and we almost immediately go into training, and the division commander, 2-star general, comes down, this early January 02, and says, you're not going to Afghanistan, you're going to Iraq. And I'm like, what the hell is in Iraq? And the malfeasance of Bush, Cheney, Rumsfeld, Wolfowitz, Feith, all of them should be taken to task for what they did. Obviously Rumsfeld's left us, but the one time our country asked for a head on a platter, the one time that in at least modern history, that there's sort of casus belli and just war to go find this guy who plotted this. We don't do that. We have an economy of force, and as Rumsfeld famously said, there aren't enough targets in Afghanistan. Well, you had plenty of targets if your goal was to capture Osama bin Laden and get the hell out of there. But those clowns forever changed the foreign policy, domestic policy of the United States when they squandered the goodwill of the American people by redirecting all that pent-up energy and putting it on Iraq. And you talk about what's the difference between what we did in Iraq and what Putin is doing in Ukraine? I would argue that Putin has a more legitimate border issue with Ukraine than we ever had in Iraq. And I'm not justifying for all the people that are going to come throw knives at me. I'm not justifying what Putin's doing in Ukraine at all. What I'm saying is we had no justification for going into Iraq. Thousands of men and women killed, wounded, just Americans, tens of thousands all over, from all walks of life. And it was a real abuse of the goodwill of the American people. We were hurt. We were wounded psychologically, physically. Our national capital was attacked. Our financial center, New York City, was attacked. It was a big psychological blow and a physical blow to those that perished. And so, why not capture all that goodwill and do everything you can to capture Bin Laden and Al Qaeda, and because you're justified in that, but go into Iraq with some make-believe story and then having Colin Powell, God rest his soul, get up in front of the UN and lie. I mean, come on. So that, and I'm speaking a little bit to what you're talking about. I think that it's almost not contemporary anymore to think about Operation Iraqi Freedom and that's 23 years ago. That was the name of it. Enduring Freedom was the Afghanistan op, and so there was a plan to put the 82nd Airborne, 101st Airborne, and 10th Mountain Division into Afghanistan and Pakistan and just pop it like a zit, find all these guys and be done with it, and then get out of there and let them run their country. Instead, because we misdirected into Iraq, we're left with a 20-year hanging Chad, malaise in Afghanistan that ended up with zero progress. Right, zero progress. We tried to impose Western values and training and systems on a fundamentally tribal, not organization, entity in Afghanistan.
So what I would say is that this is exactly what President Eisenhower warned us against on his way out of the office: is beware the undue influence of the military-industrial complex. And what you're describing is how they misdirected what some people would consider a legitimate military operation, going after the people who supposedly attacked us on 9/11 in Afghanistan, instead redirecting that to go into Iraq, which a lot of people have said killed 1 million people. And that what we now know, through General Wesley Clark, it revealed this, that he was shown classified documents that revealed that they had a plan to go into 7 Muslim countries, and they've gone into every one of them now except for Lebanon. And so,
Iran too.
And right, and so those are the last 2 on their list. And they went and they did Libya, they did Iraq, they did Syria, Yemen. So this was pre-planned. This is the project for a new American century. And the Patriot Act was written up way before 9/11, and so it was almost like it would have been. It's amazing if someone didn't engineer 9/11 so they could do this. But our whole foreign policy has been based on 9/11 for the last 23 years, and that's why we don't have to ever declare war anywhere, because they give the AUMF the authorization for the use of military force. You're supposed to be fighting when the president sends troops. They're supposed to be fighting terrorists, and that's all because of 9/11. And of course, again, I know you're not going to ever admit to this. You're a general, but my point of view is that we're the terrorists, right? We're the one, and when it suits us, we fund the terrorists, like ISIS. We created the Mujahideen, which turned went into Al-Qaeda. We are in bed with ISIS in Syria trying to overthrow Assad. Why? For a pipeline. That's exactly what that was all about. And we're in there stealing their oil to this day. What is the difference? What we're doing is way worse than what Putin's doing, because Putin actually has, as you mentioned or alluded to, he has a legitimate reason for doing what he's done. And we don't have any legitimate reason for being in Syria. We have no legitimate reason for being in bed with ISIS and the Al-Qaeda. We have no legitimate reason for doing what we did in Libya or what we did in Iraq. And a lot of people, 80% of Americans, are against us being in bed with Israel and funding. People. I've heard people say that you have to be wary of Iran. You know why we have to worry about Iran? Because Iran had a democratic government and the CIA overthrew it so we could steal their oil. We installed a puppet called the Shah of Iran, and then they rejected that Shah and they put in this right-wing religious government. That's always the blowback of the CIA. So any problem that we think we're confronting with terrorism, we've created. We created the Mujahideen, turned into Al-Qaeda. We created this, the people that are running the Iran right now.
Wahhabism.
It's all been created by the United States. And so that's the thing that so there's nobody else to fear in the world except the United States. And people around the world know that. It's only the people in America that don't know that, because we're propagandized by the military-industrial complex, which owns our media, right? There's only 6 media companies, and they are, and all the journalists aren't worth a shit. They don't come from blue-collar backgrounds anymore. They come from elite universities, and they're class loyal, and know they have to work for a billionaire, which is why we find ourselves in endless wars, spending $1 trillion a year on military that we don't need, while we're starving and hollowing out our own country, people living under every bridge, senior citizens taking half their medicine, people can't afford houses, half of America can't afford $1,000 emergency, 50% of all wage earners earn less than $30,000 a year. And that's because the corporate capture by the military-industrial complex and big oil of our government. When you see a session of Congress, only a fool thinks that they're in there doing the bidding of workers, regular Americans, senior citizens, and students. They're in there doing the bidding of the international billionaire class, which owns the Democrats and Republicans, which is why we have 1,000 military bases around the world. And read Confessions of an Economic Hitman, and you'll find out nothing's changed since then. But let me just go to this. Let me get your opinion on this. Here's Dick Durbin from my home state, Illinois, and he gave this speech. So everybody's trying to figure out why. I think this is another reason why they hate Trump. They want to get rid of Trump because he wanted to seal the border and have an orderly immigration process, which they do not want, right? So the billionaire class does not want this for many reasons. Here's one of the big ones. Like you said, they cannot meet their recruiting goals. And here's Dick Durbin's solution to the military not being able to meet their recruiting goals.
The presiding officer, my colleague from the state of Illinois, has legislation which addresses one aspect of that. Her bill, and I hope I describe it accurately, says that if you're an undocumented person in this country and you can pass the physical and the required test, background test, the like, you can serve in our military, and if you do it honorably, we will make you citizens of the United States. Do we need that? Do you know what the recruiting numbers are at the Army and the Navy and the Air Force? They can't reach their quotas each month. They can't find enough people to join our military forces. And there are those who are undocumented who want the chance to serve and risk their lives for this country.
So I don't know if people realize that's the reason why, that's one of the big reasons why the border is open. And by the way, that's how Rome ended, when you fill your military with people who aren't loyal to your country. And that's the big plan. That's the billionaire plan right now. So what do you say to that kind of thinking? And do you think that am I onto something with why the border is being left open?
Well, I think that the border is left over. That's probably part of it. I think it's more of let's move these people into areas where we want to have more electoral votes, more congressional seats, because you can't count them in you can't ask them when you're doing the census. So all these illegal aliens actually get counted in the census when they're actually not citizens. And so if they position them properly according to their power base, then they ought to be able to enhance that power base, more congressional districts, more electoral votes. I think that it's a slippery slope to be taking people who are recent illegal immigrants and inviting them to serve in the military. It's always been the case, at least when I served, that if someone were the child, a child of an immigrant born in the United States, that they could then they've gone to U.S. schools, they've been through the system, they could then serve and get their citizenship that way. And I was fine with that, quite frankly, because of the cultural aspects as a young child, as a teenager, and then all of a sudden, they're in the military if they want to be, and they were raised in America. These people aren't raised in America. They don't share our values. And so desperation, this is kind of what I was saying earlier, the desperation to quote unquote fill the ranks, they need to take a hard look at why the ranks aren't being filled. And it's because of this progressive left ideology being forced down the throats. Where are a good number of our recruits coming from? From the working class, the red states, moms and dads vote with their feet and with their children. And I ran a major school system, the 15th largest in the country in Wake County, North Carolina. Parents will move their kid out of a school if the school's not doing well for their kid, or into a school if they think it's a good school. And it's the same thing with the military. Parents will encourage their children to go in the military if they think it's a good thing, and they'll make sure that they don't, to the extent they can, if they think it's a bad thing. And it's not any more complicated than that on the recruiting side, but we shouldn't try to cover that up with people from Venezuela or wherever they're, El Salvador, or wherever they're coming from. They may be perfectly fine people. They could be axe murderers. I don't know. They could be future doctors. But the bottom line is we don't know. They weren't raised. They aren't a citizen. They weren't brought up within our country. And so the progressive left is tearing at every thread of the fabric of this nation because they want to fundamentally change it. They hate this country. They think it's a terrible country, and they want to change it into something. They're not sure what, but they're sure that they don't like what it is now, even though they're all seem to be doing okay if they serve in the Senate or Congress.
I want to show you this. The only thing I would push back with on you on there is that I don't think stuff like this that I'm about to show you, like this, the pronoun game that people are playing, the gender ideology, the inserting biological males into women's spaces, that's coming from the top down. That's coming from places like BlackRock and Vanguard, and those are these international corporations that hold $55-75 trillion in wealth, that actually run everything, including our politicians. And they want to do that for two reasons. One, as they're raping the planet and making it unaffordable for regular people to live and own houses, they get to wrap themselves in a patina of virtue by saying, look we have women of color and we have trans women raping the planet, and doesn't that make us good people? And the second thing is it keeps people fighting over bathrooms and fighting over stupid ideology and dividing the country. And so they need people divided. When people came together over Occupy Wall Street, and the Tea Party at the same time was just as upset at Wall Street as Occupy Wall Street, the establishment, the people at BlackRock, Vanguard, the people who run our government and run our politicians, they saw that was a problem, and so they had to figure out ways to keep us divided, which is why they started inserting the white supremacy terms and calling everybody racist. That's been studied. I'm not making that up. You saw that in the Washington Post, the New York Times. They started calling everybody white supremacists and racist as a way to divide the country, and they start doing stuff like this to divide the country. So I don't think that's coming from a necessarily progressive left. Of course, what's considered the left today, I don't consider the left. They're pro-war authoritarians, and but they do stuff like this. And so let me play this for you and get your reaction. And maybe this is also a reason why the military is having a hard time with their recruiting goals.
All too often, I hear leaders talk about providing everyone with dignity and respect like it's an aspirational goal. That's not good enough. Dignity and respect is the bare minimum. It's the floor of where we can be. We must set our sights higher and focus on intentional inclusivity, because there are still far too many people out there, not just LGBTQ individuals, that feel marginalized, shut out, or discriminated against. So for all of you out there, I ask you to set out your symbols of pride, share your pronouns in your email, particularly if you're a person who doesn't think they need to. Initiate difficult conversations about racial and gender barriers, and share a bit of your vulnerability in a way that draws others in. You all have the power to take intentionally inclusive actions to ensure the multiple perspectives that we know make us stronger as we devise winning warfighting strategies get heard.
Now, I'll show you one more thing. So that was that's a Lieutenant Colonel Bree Fram. And here, I don't know who this person's name is, but let me play it for you.
So inclusion is a national security imperative. We fight today, and we are going to fight in the future using brain power. And if that brain, who's going to revolutionize the way we fight in space, we fight in cyber, just happens to be in a trans body, you should want them all serving alongside me.
So I got no problem with anybody who wants to serve our country. But I do have a problem with them turning the military into an LGBTQ organization. And first of all, I know many gay people who don't agree with this agenda. And I was wondering, as a general, what is your take on stuff like this, and what does the rank and file military think about stuff like this?
Why is it happening?
Well, so I think it's all part of the divide and conquer strategy. So they roll these folks out to and give them platforms to further drive this wedge in between people and get people hating each other, quite frankly. You don't win wars by saying these kinds of things. You win wars by getting out and training in the Mojave Desert until you puke, and you redo it and you redo it and you redo it, and you figure it out. You're getting yelled at. You're yelling at people. You get people in the foxhole. You have simulated casualties. You got to carry them back. And I don't care, who you like to sleep with. I don't care. If somebody raises their right hand and wants to serve the country, awesome. Everybody counts or nobody counts. And so as long as you're mentally and physically fit, then that's fine. This in-your-face piece is really disturbing. And it is a contributory factor to the recruiting challenges we have. And that cause and effect is obvious for everyone to see. And there's probably a few other factors in there, but this is a piece of that puzzle. But because it breaks the narrative, because to address it or to mention it, just like it breaks the narrative to hold anybody accountable for Afghanistan or Lloyd Austin, who I know very well. When I was deputy commanding general, he was commanding general. Hold him accountable for not telling the president he was going to be gone for a week or two. When I was the undersecretary, I had to sign. I was leaving for 2 weeks to go on an official trip to Africa and a couple other places, Middle East. I had to sign a piece of paper appointing my deputy as the acting undersecretary. There are systems in place, and it was signed by the office administrator, and she took it and gave it to the secretary's people. So there are systems in place for all of that, but nobody's held accountable, and so you have a big giant wedge being driven down in the military, and it's impacting readiness first and foremost. As a former paratrooper, former commander, former Brigadier General, I get upset when I see this because I've lost men and women in combat, and I would always think, what could I have done differently? And it's certainly the hell isn't using proper pronouns. It's one more day training might have saved that person's life. And troops are unbelievably resilient, and they don't really care. At the end of there might be some barracks humor going on, all that, whatever. But in the foxhole, when you're getting shot at, as long as the person next to you can shoot straight, that's all you really care about. And that person's going to have your back and you're going to have their back. Because study after study after study has shown that you fight for the person in the foxhole, not for a flag or a piece of paper. You're out there trying to survive.
Go ahead, Kurt. You had a question?
Are you familiar with that Ghost in the Machine commercial that came out a couple years ago for the fourth PSYOP unit? It was real creepy, and it was. I think that's when, especially when she's talking about the brain inside is whatever. There's a lot of recruitment going on of like let's call it neuroatypical people to do PSYOPs. We know it's legal for them to do it to Americans ever since 2011. Is that what this is part of? That Ghost in the? Are you familiar? You saw that commercial? Do you know what that is?
Yeah, no, I'm familiar with it. What I would say is that the line between the posse comitatus line, where you're not allowed to conduct military operations domestically with the armed forces, I think that line has gotten thinner and thinner and thinner, and with the corruption and weaponization of all the institutions, it would be naive to think that the U.S. military has not also been similarly weaponized.
Okay, well, I wish we had more time. You're welcome back anytime. General Anthony Tata, or do you say Tata? He has got this new book, which is going into its second printing. It's gotten amazing reviews. The Phalanx Cold. Everybody check that out. And I really appreciate your time. Thanks for your insight. Oh, one more question. I'm sorry. I got so we mentioned on this show a lot that Donald Trump was the only president of my lifetime didn't start another war. And we've speculated about why that is. Do you have an insight since you served under him? Why do you think that he was the only president of my lifetime didn't start a war?
He's the antithesis of everything you've been saying about the billionaire class, the uniparty, and all of that. He wants to shrink the military. He wants to shrink, in foreign entanglements. He wants to become energy self-sufficient again, so we can take everybody out of the Middle East, and he wants to focus on vital interests. It's that simple. And when you look at our vital interests right now, there's really nothing compelling out there where we should have 1,000 bases and that kind of thing.
So basically you're saying he's not, as all the other presidents are controlled by the deep state and the military-industrial complex. He's not, and that's why there's such this big push to criminalize him.
Also, NATO. Remember Iran? We covered this when Niger kicked France out.
Yeah,
And so when he pulled out of the Iran deal, I guess a big part of that was France doing some business with Iran on the download. He screwed that up for them.
Yeah.
So he was talking about NATO needs to pay their bills so. That's the entanglement. Like America is a state in a bigger country called NATO.
Yeah.
I don't know who the hell runs it, but I don't get to vote for him.
Yeah. So France was going to build a couple of car manufacturing plants, Peugeot or somebody, same with Germany, and Trump disrupted that. So, I mean, that's all the subtext, all the subtitles that you don't hear about because the media is in bed with the billionaire class, the corporate class. It's all one big uniparty where you have, it's all about the Phalanx Code. Big government, big tech, big media, all working to put their jackboot on the neck of the little guy.
And you're 100% right about that. You're 100% right about that for sure. It's a uniparty. It's run by international billionaire class. And, I'm finding out Jeff Bezos doesn't just own media here in the United States. I was on a show in Norway the other day. He's owned the media in Norway too. It's definitely international, and they definitely don't have the interest of America. And I think there's a lot to what you say about that Trump's, he ran on an anti-interventionist platform, which also drove them crazy, right? And so he said we should get out of the middle. So anyway, we have to go. I appreciate you. Everybody check out the book, General Anthony Tata. Thank you very much for being on, and we look forward to talking to you. I could talk to you all day. But
yeah, thanks, guys.
Okay.
Jimmy, thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Okay, let's take a break. We'll be right back with comedian Jeff Dye.
And we're going to go to Rumble.
Oh, we're going to go to Rumble
yeah,
now?
we're ready, and we're all set.
Okay, so we're
informed.
We're going to jump over to Rumble. Steph, do you have to read anything?
Nope, I'm all ready to go.
Okay, we're going to jump over to Rumble. So everybody leave YouTube. Fuck YouTube. Go over to Rumble. Rumble's about free speech. We'll see you over there. Hey, guess what? I'm putting a lot of my money, my retirement money, into precious metals, gold and silver. Why? Because lots of people I trust with money, Max Kaiser's one of them. He's a big Bitcoin guy, and he told me gold is a good hedge against inflation, and gold is a good hedge against the stock market. And so did Carol Roth said that. And then also, who's the guy who wrote the book from Maui, my friend? Why am I blanking on his name? Ed Dowd. So they all said this, so I'm with them. And so I'm putting that into this. And I decided to partner with our sponsor to do this, Colonial Metals Group. They're helping me set up a secure, self-directed IRA where I have access to my assets no matter what the stock market and no matter what the government's doing. So let a team of experts at Colonial Metals Group help you protect your family's future. We've put together a special offer for our audience. Get this offer. Listen to this. You click on the link in the description below or call a special 800 number and you'll receive a safe and up to $10,000 in free silver. Then the number to call is 888-910-1419. 888-910-1419 or go to colonialsmetalgroup.com/Jimmy-Dore-Show.
Hey, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there for more AM Joy.